Hey, what's up everyone? Raging Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always. And since this is gonna be my final video of current year, I figure what better topic to discuss than the complete transformation that the Western anime industry has gone through this year. And in case you've been living under a rock, here's the Cliff Notes version. For the first time ever that I'm aware of, the vast majority of anime being released in the West is under the control of large media corporations, as opposed to the smaller by-fan, for-fan companies that we've gotten used to over the past few decades. And don't worry, I can hear some of you out there now. Oh, what are you talking about? Funimation's still around and releasing a lot of stuff. Yeah, the same Funimation that's just recently been bought out by Sony. Oh, okay, so Funimation is owned by Sony now. Well, we still have Sentai, right? Well, that's kind of correct. Sentai are still licensing a few shows on their own, but most of what they license is now through a partnership they have with Amazon. That's right, Sentai has partnered up with Amazon to license shows for streaming on Amazon's Anime Strike service. Amazon streams the show, they aren't particularly interested in physical media, Sentai can handle that part. Now, as I just said, I know that Sentai still licenses a few things on their own for streaming on their new High Dive service, but all the big name shows are going to Amazon. So you got Funimation now being owned by Sony, the same Sony, by the way, of Ghostbusters fame, though I'm not entirely willing to resign myself to doom and gloom here, because Sony also happens to own another pretty important anime and video game company, that being Aniplex. And Aniplex has been pretty good about not censoring anything. And Sony seems to be content to just let them do their thing as long as they're profitable, at least from what I see on the outside. Hopefully they'll do the same with Funimation. But yeah, Funimation is now part of the Sony family. Sentai is partnering up with Amazon in order to better compete with Funimation for all the good shows. And on top of that, you also got Netflix, who announced that they're going to be investing copious amounts of money into anime in the future. They've been licensing a few shows a season here and there for a while now, and apparently they intend to step up their game. And that right there is the Western anime industry landscape as it stands right now. With a few small name exceptions, pretty much the entire Western anime industry is now Sony, Netflix, and Amazon. And honestly, it's not too hard to see why they would want to invest in anime. Anime may still be a pretty small niche market overall, but unlike the vast majority of Western entertainment media of all stripes, anime is actually still growing, as small as it may be. So from a purely business standpoint, it makes sense that all these giant media corporations would be interested in investing in one of the few growth markets still left out there. Though it's what effect this is gonna have that kind of has me a little bit concerned, or at least curious. As long as these companies stick to doing things like bidding for the licenses for shows that have already been made, or funding the animation studios to keep doing what they've been doing until now, we're not gonna see anything bad come of this. In fact, it's all gonna be good. If they did this, then worst case, we wouldn't see any difference at all. Best case, we'd actually see a market improvement in the anime we get. And on the Japanese side, everything I've seen indicates that Japan actually loves all this American money. These giant American corporations apparently pay a whole lot better than they usually get paid by the Japanese production committees. And that's another thing that they're happy to not have to deal with. If, say, Netflix goes over to some animation studio and says, oh, we want you to make an anime of this manga and we're gonna pay you. Just us. All the politics and drama that usually go with a production committee, and having to run everything through that giant bureaucracy and get like 20 people to sign off on every small decision, all of that overhead is now completely gone. So the Japanese anime companies, they love this. So this is a positive for them as well. They only have to deal with a fraction of the bureaucracy they normally have to put up with. They get paid more and their animators can actually afford to eat. Working conditions are most likely going to be a whole lot better. It's looking like it's going to be good all around. On the one condition that these Western companies let these Japanese anime studios just do their thing. But we know it's only a matter of time until they start making demands. Hey, you know everything that ruined entertainment in the West? Oh, let's force it on Japan now, too. It'll totally go over well now, unlike last time. Ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen in the end, but thankfully, I still think that's far in the future. Last I read, all the major anime studios in Japan are apparently booked through 2020, so we should at least be good through then before we start seeing any massive changes that Western influence might have. But even then, it's still gonna lead to an improvement across the board at first. If this massive wave of Western investment continues, then I'm willing to bet we will most likely see the second golden age of anime. These companies and individuals will be granted the money they need to create the product they actually want to create as opposed to what they know will sell or what they're told to. That's the phase when everything will be going perfect. We're probably going to see a lot more masterpieces across the board when that happens. But even then, that will probably only be temporary if the Western companies decide to start making demands. As soon as the suits come down and say that, well, our focus groups show that people want more of this stereotype and this situation and this, so you need to add all of this to your show, kind of like what they're doing here in the West, that's when it will all be over and the slow decline will begin. But anyway, that's just my own speculation, don't take it seriously yet. And hell, now that I think about it, even this speculation that I just gave you is riding entirely on the belief that these anime licenses are actually going to be successful for these major corporations. For all we know, Amazon, Netflix, and Sony are actually going to lose out on their investment in anime. If that happens and they choose to pull out, then things are probably going to stay the same as they are now. Whole lot of different directions this can go, but just pay attention to what's going on. Oh, and before I sign off, there's something else that's most likely going to be strongly affected now that all this anime is owned by these major multimedia corporations. That, of course, being fan-subbing and anime piracy in general. Right now, here in the West anyway, no one's really given much of a crap about anime piracy, because companies like Funimation and Sentai who've owned all of this were too small to threaten any sort of legal action anyway. But now that all this anime is owned by Sony, Amazon, and Netflix, we're probably going to see crackdowns on anime piracy in the vein that we see on movie and TV show piracy. Though it'll be interesting to see how the anime community as a whole takes this. Specifically because you could argue that the entire Western anime fandom only exists in the first place because of piracy. Because of all those old fan-subbers making VHS tapes in their college dorm rooms. Hell, the only reason we have things like simulcasting in the first place is because of piracy. Fansubbing is still around, but that whole community is just a shadow of what it used to be. And this is simply because there's not as much need for them as there used to be. Nowadays, just about every single anime that's airing, you can legally watch either for cheap or for free at the same time as it airs in Japan, or at least close enough to the same time. And on top of that, it's also uncensored. If any of that changes, you're gonna see fansubbing just ramp up again, let me tell you. Especially the censorship part. If these giant corporations think it's okay to censor anime now, oh man, they're gonna lose so much investment money it's not even funny. I will be the first to admit, if they start censoring the official Western releases of this anime, I'm gonna go to the fansubs. And there's enough people like me in the anime community that think this way, that if these giant corporations mess up a little bit too much, the fansub community is going to start booming again. To the point that even with all this extra piracy enforcement that we're going to see, it's not even going to be a drop in the bucket. But either way, those are just my thoughts. I think I'm going to leave off here. Just figured you guys should know about the state of the Western anime industry right now and what potential effects it may have not just on the Western industry and fandom as a whole, but also over at the source in Japan. What do you guys think is going to come of this though? I'm quite sure you guys will come up with ideas that I haven't even thought of yet, so please share in the comment section below. What do you think is going to come of the Western anime industry now being dominated by massive multimedia corporations? Again, I'd love to hear your opinion. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.